have a really important bill right now that is on the governor's desk awaiting signature. This is kind of a problem across the entire healthcare, arena. Is the fact that the payment for our services, right, is significantly lower than many times the cost that it takes a therapist to deliver those services. As things get more and more expensive, the cost of doing business continues to increase. Clinics and private practice owners, they're forced to make hard decisions, right? Can I really afford, right? And this is where the advocacy and the population that I work with come in. Can I really afford as a clinic owner to provide care to these individuals that have a certain type of payment that's not going to be enough to cover my costs, right? We don't want patients to have to miss out on needed vital therapy services because we don't have a way to pay for those things. So one of the important bills that we brought forward this year is Assembly Bill 931, right? That's the bill number, Assembly Bill 931. And basically what this bill says is, hey, if you have physical therapy services that are part of your existing insurance plan, right? The insurance should not be able to force you to get extra authorization so that you can access those services and get the care you need, right? That authorization process, it's hell, man. It's time consuming. A lot of times there's multiple cycles that have to happen in order for a person to get authorized for the services they need. And we just don't think that's the right thing to do. So Assembly Bill 931, which we have been successful and have kind of navigated this to the legislative process. It's waiting for Governor Newsom to sign this bill. Governor Newsom signed this bill, would basically say the initial 12 visits that you have as part of your plan, you don't need any pre-authorization for that, right? You go see a physical therapist, you can start therapy right away. Your insurance will cover those 12 visits.
Parallax. You are now tuned into the Parallax Effect. It's not the message, it's the messenger. What up, Ryan? It's time. Parallax. Oatmeal's better than no meal. Guess who's back to make mountains out of molehills? If this don't move you, I bet my folks will. This beat's smooth, but trust me, there ain't no chill. Ask Ryan, if I'm lying, I'm flying. It's the sculpture of all aspects of the culture. Parallax. The People's Podcast is back, laying it down flat for you wherever you at. Your job, or your car, or your jog, or your flight. Loads of archives with no ending in sight. Hitting on any topic, long as it ain't no nonsense. You can see the others for the drama and the gossip. Word to Brett, best there ever was, recognize it. Never secondary, my eyes stay on the pocket. Parallax. And if you feeling the vibes, give us 5 stars. Oh, and follow and subscribe. Parallax. Sit back and recline, relax and enjoy the ride. Cause it's that Parallax. And you just passed the test. This is the Parallax Effect. Come on, Parallax. Sit back and recline, relax and enjoy the ride. Cause it's that Parallax. And you're here, that's mad respect. Welcome to the Parallax Effect. Yeah.
Welcome aboard to the Parallax Effect podcast, where we continue to navigate through the shifting tides of perspectives. Again, I am your host, Ryan Lavelle, and as we get ready to dive into yet another episode, as we have a very special show packed with valuable insight and knowledge planned for you today, let me first remind you, as always, that you can follow us on Instagram at Parallax Effect Media, also on Facebook at the Parallax Effect Podcast, on Twitter at Parallax Effects. Once again, that's Parallax Effects with an S. And you can also find us on TikTok, search RyloKen27 or search Parallax Effect Media. And please don't forget, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is in the show description. Search the Parallax Effect Podcast on YouTube, and the link is also on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Be sure to leave comments and ratings. We really would like to hear from you. Let's continue to create meaningful discussion. But all righty then, today's guest, let's get right into it. We waste no time, as we already know. I've known this individual for several years now throughout the profession of physical therapy. He is one of the most well-rounded individuals I know. I say that with 100% certainty with regards to fitness knowledge, and has an empathetic nature for people. He is a physical therapist. He is board certified in neurology, just like myself. That's how we connected. Who graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a degree in human biodynamics just before heading over to Boston University. So took it from the West Coast to the East Coast to obtain his master's in physical therapy, followed by a transitional doctorate back here at Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona, California. He is an avid runner who can be found trail running and ultralight backpacking with his wife at a trail near you. We'll get into that. He is an influential advocate for the profession of physical therapy and currently serves on the board of directors, the Government Affairs Committee, and also is the chairperson for the California Physical Therapy Political Action Committee, PTPAC for short. He also is the APTA Federal Affairs Liaison for California. And he is currently employed at Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center, high quality care, and is an adjunct instructor for the Department of Physical Therapy at the University of Southern California. He also is a program director at the USC Fit Families Program and is a member of the Committee on Social and Behavioral Determinants of Health within the LA County Department of Health Services, wearing so many hats. So it's all my pleasure to welcome the OG, the triple OG, Oscar Gallardo. Welcome to the Parallax Effect. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. That introduction was amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I always,
man.
you always kind of forget all the different things you're involved with sometimes, but man, that just kind of puts it in perspective. So thank you for that great introduction, Ryan.
Puts it all in perspective. The things that you do, everything, all your volunteer work, obviously your primary gig as a meaningful physical therapist for many people that you've come across throughout your time. It's all very much appreciated by individuals like me, individuals like your patients, individuals in the community that you touch that you may not even know or may not even meet, sir.
Well, thank you so much, man. Before we start, I got to tell you, I just want to make sure I was reminding myself, number one, to thank you, and number two, to congratulate you on this great podcast. I've been since you told me that, since I found out that you had the podcast, I went back and listened to the past episodes, and I learned a lot about you, man. So I'm really proud of you. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to just chat and share some different perspectives. And thank you so much for having me. And I wish you the best. I wish you the best.
Thank you so much. Really means a lot coming from you, especially someone who's obviously achieved so much in physical therapy. But like I said in the intro, just someone I look up to just an overall well-rounded person. Want to do well in every facet that you involve yourself in, and you make sure that all your endeavors touch multiple individuals, not just patients, but therapists, community, like I said. So really means a lot coming from you, and really thank you as well for coming on, sharing this platform, because we have a lot of meaningful topics to discuss today. We kind of always start out, with this question, getting to know, our guests, our friends here. And what we want to know first off is well, tell me about where you grew up. Are there any childhood memories that stand out for you that make you the fine gentleman that you are today?
Oh man, how far back do you want me to go? My story is an immigrant story. I was not born in the United States. I was born in Guatemala. I have some memories. I came to the United States as a 6-year-old. Like many stories that you hear, mom came out here first. She settled in LA, after, kind of a struggle, right? Just getting here. And, you hear the stories of people, taking the long journey, walking through deserts, crossing the freeway, doing all that stuff. My mom did all that.
Wow.
So she really was like the trailblazer. She's the one that had the courage to, to say man, I'm not happy in this situation and I need to do something about it. She had that courage to come out to the United States, not knowing anybody, with, very little resources, very little money. I think she knew one person who was really her point of contact here. After being here in the United States, about 5 years or so, She finally, was settled in. She remarried when she came to the United States. Married, amazing individual, my stepdad. And it wasn't until 1981. So I was born in 1976. When my mom came to the United States, she left me with my grandmother. So my grandmother raised me in Guatemala, along with Latino household. Many families, same house, cousins, aunts, uncles, siblings. And it took her a while to get settled in. When she decided that she was gonna leave Guatemala, come to the United States, I was about 3 months old or so. And so raised by my grandmother. Fast forward to 1981, she's finally settled in, she's remarried. She had a green card at the time. She married my stepfather. He had legal status here, which allowed her to be able to bring myself and all of my siblings along to the United States. So, if you kind of haven't figured out already, she left me as a 3-month-old. I didn't meet her until I was 5 years old. That was the first memory that I have of my mom was just meeting her when she came back to Guatemala to just kind of start arranging everything that needed to happen for us to come to the United States, which finally happened in 1982, which was kind of a funny story. The day we arrived was on Halloween Day,
Wow.
1982. It was hilarious because, Halloween, for the most part, especially back then, was a truly an American phenomenon. That's not something that, people celebrate in other places. And it was kind of a trip being this little 6-year-old kid and watching watching all these people in costumes running around everywhere. It's like, what's going on here, So that was kind of a trip. That was my first experience in the United States, was Halloween Day. So, if that doesn't scare you away, I guess, nothing will.
Nothing will at that point. That's
Nothing
the first
will.
experience. And what was it like meeting your mom for the first time you remember at 5? Like, what I know people, and some people have these same stories, such as yourself too, but a lot of us hear just like you mentioned, the trials and the tribulations that your mom had just coming here, and the wherewithal she needed to have to be able to part ways with you for so long. What was that moment like, meeting her at 5 years old?
It was a trip. I mean, this was an individual, right? My grandmother, she was the rock, right? My grandmother always did a amazing job of just ensuring that I knew who my mother was, showing me pictures, talking about her. They obviously communicated back and forth, writing letters, things like that. And, my grandmother, for all of us, did a great job of just reminding us, like, who we were. And, but still, as a 5-year-old, you've grown up with somebody. I always believed that, my grandmother was my mom, because that's the only, parental figure that I knew, who I had grown up with. So when my mom arrived, it was a weird scenario. I didn't know what to think. You don't really know how to process those things until years later, and you don't really understand. Wait, you mean I've been living in this scenario for, my entire life? All of a sudden you're telling me, like, I got to leave my grandma behind and I'm going somewhere that I don't know with somebody who I've never met before. Like, that's that was tough. It was a tough adjustment coming to the United States and having to leave, someone you love behind, to come to a new scenario and live in a new family, essentially, right? A family that you have to get used to. So it was challenging for sure. And, as the years go by, you kind of understand the reasons why things happen, and I understood, and as I do now, of course, the sacrifice that it took for both of them, for my grandmother, for my mom, for sure, the sacrifice that it took on both sides in order to, do something that was going to better my life and, that of my siblings. So there's a lot of appreciation there and a lot of love for that. I mean, you can't knock that. That's something that there's a important reason why that happened, and they got it done.
Amazing story. I did not know that. This is the first time I am hearing this story. So, selfishly very thankful for your mom making that voyage, so I can meet someone like you and everybody else you have met through your walk of life as well, too. So you arrive Halloween, you're wondering why all these folks are exchanging candies for scares. It's just a strange situation. So what was the next couple years kind of coming in and changing environments and all that kind of stuff? And also in that answer, how many siblings do you have as well too?
Oh yeah. So I have three older siblings. So the four of us were, from my mom's first marriage in Guatemala, and since then, there's now five of us. So my younger sister is 10 years younger than I am. So that's five of us. We were living over, if you know the LA area. Those of you who know the LA area, over at the like Florence Firestone area of LA.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys know the Blue Line, where the Blue Line kind of passes over by Firestone Boulevard, pretty near like the Watts was like right down the street, like the Watts Towers. Basically, if you take those train tracks, we used to go to the park right there, Roosevelt Park, in Florence Firestone area. My mom doesn't know this. If she hears this, is the first time she's ever going to hear this. Me and my friends used to go out there and just like run along the train tracks, and we would make it all the way down to Watts Towers and come back to the park and like go to our soccer practice and everything. And then we'd go home. So I was kind of running around with my friends. I played a lot of sports. So that little park there, Roosevelt Park, that's where everything happened. I played baseball there, played soccer there, learned how to swim, or kind of learned how to swim, at least learned to tread water in that pool there. So living there for several years. Went to Graham Elementary School in that area. After that, Gage Middle School in Huntington Park. And during after the first year of high school, my family moved to Norwalk, where I attended and graduated from Santa Fe Springs High School. I was always somebody who, I love school. I mean, I love learning. I love reading. I just immerse myself in education. So it was, my childhood was really, geared around, reading, a lot of reading. I spent, just countless hours in the library, learning everything I could, just soaking stuff up. I love the title of your podcast, right? Because it's all about different perspectives and understanding different viewpoints. And that was my childhood, just reading everything I could get my hands on, reading newspapers, reading books, reading journals, reading encyclopedias. Total nerd, man. Total nerd. But I
Wow.
embrace it. So I'm very proud of that.
Power to the nerds. That is for sure. They make the world go round. Oscar comes in. Well, that's like a movie made story. Halloween, 1982, coming on in, running the train tracks, playing sports, learning. Like that is made for the silver or the big screen. Doesn't even matter. It's a great story. That all of us are learning here about you today. So you mentioned, you played a lot of sports. You also read a lot. It kind of goes to my attribute to you as being a well-rounded individual. What were some of the sports you excelled at? What were some of the subjects that you liked learning about?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of sports, I've always enjoyed running, right? So everything that I did really revolved around, a lot of speed. I ran track in high school. I ran cross country. I played football in high school. In my childhood, again, when we were living over in the LA area, soccer, baseball, basketball, man, everything there was to do, I did it. Like going out with friends as best, in the neighborhood, riding bikes, just running up and down my driveway. Even, I had a little dog. We had a dog, a family pet. And I would just spend, hours just like running back and forth up and down the driveway, just because I like to run, like, little Forrest Gump over there. So I did that. And I've always been someone who's just very athletic. I just love to move, and I just love to compete. And really, that was the big thing. Like, that was the driver, right? Is I love to compete. If I saw somebody running down the street, like, I was like, man, I could run faster than that kid. And it just pushed me to be better. On the soccer field, I saw somebody play or, pull out some kind of move. I wanted to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
On the basketball court, I wanted to jump higher than everybody. But here's the thing. I mean, me, I'm 5'3". So never had a lot of size. I was always the smallest kid. I was always the skinniest kid, but the drive was there. I always wanted to be better than everybody, even though I didn't have the physical attributes that other kids had. Just that drive and that passion for what I was doing just has always kept me going.
Right. The size of the fight and the dog. is what I always say, because I kind of fought those same battles as well too. Oscar Gallardo here on the Parallax Effect podcast. Excellent upbringing story as well too. So you maintain a great athletic that state, which you keep to this day, and we'll get into that. But you also had the same drive for your education, right? So excelling in that manner. Where did it take you post high school?
Yeah, I mean, post high school, like I said, I loved everything. And one of the questions that you answered earlier is like, what subjects? Well, I was always a science geek, right? I love science. I loved reading things about health, the human body. You know, this kind of gets me to how I ended up as a physical therapist. I love the brain. Like I enjoyed reading things about the brain and understanding different things about the brain. And I always saw myself as, wanting to be a brain researcher. That's what I wanted to do, learn everything about it and be able to teach people about the brain. So that's what I wanted to do. So when I decided, um, deciding on the major, obviously, like most physical therapists, probably we were pre-med, right? Because we thought we were going to med school probably. And for me,
Yep.
I wanted to be
Raise my hand
a
there.
researcher. That's right. Most of us.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you get to college, you get to undergrad, and you start experiencing a little bit of what that would be like, So I'm at Cal, and I still had this dream of being a brain researcher, right? Neurology researcher. And so I just started picking up, little gigs, little jobs, being like research assistant. I work in different labs just to see what it was like, kind of get my feet wet, and understand what it was like to do research. And guess what? I hated it. I really hated it. I hated being in the lab. I hated the stuff that I was doing was essentially, data crunching, data entry, not really doing a lot of stuff or engaging with a lot of people. And I realized at that point, like, man, I really need to be around people. That's what I like to do. I still love the brain, right? I still love, the health aspect and the education aspect that I had in my mind of what I wanted to do. But I also need to be around people. I can't be solitary, right? I can't just be locked up in a little lab or a little room and feel happy. And that's where I started really looking elsewhere, right? So what else is there? And I tried everything, at that point, I started volunteering with different professionals, engineer, Cal obviously has a really good engineering program. So I started volunteering with, engineers and lawyers and anthropologists, all my professors I'm reaching out to for opportunities, psychology, everything, until I landed, I went to the volunteer office and they placed me at the student health services. It's called the Tang Center. I think it's still called the Tang Center at Cal. And they placed me in physical therapy, in the outpatient physical therapy clinic. So a lot of orthopedic injuries, college age kids, coming in on Mondays because they sprained their ankle playing something, or, had a fall or back pain, things like that. Some of the, common orthopedic injuries that young people would have. And professor spouses, mostly orthopedic. And I liked it. I mean, I really did. I enjoyed working with the therapist there. I enjoyed what they were doing, but I didn't love it, But there was something about it, right? Something about it that I enjoyed. I enjoyed watching that therapist interact with that individual. And I enjoyed when the patients would come in after a week and say, hey, I was able to take this trip, or I was able to go back to jogging, or I went on a hike. Like, that's the piece that I love, right? And I'm like, man, how do I achieve that? But I don't really like this whole orthopedic thing, right? And so there was a therapist there. She was cool, man. She heard me out. A lot of times, those of you young physical therapists of the future, when you're volunteering, sometimes you're kind of like unseen, right, in the clinic, and you just kind of stand in the corner and you're just kind of afraid to engage with everybody. But this therapist, she would ask me questions. She talked to me. And, she asked me, hey, so what do you think? Like, you've been volunteering here for a while now. What do you think of this? And I'm like, cool. It's cool. But I don't think it's for me. Like, is there anything else that a physical therapist does? And she said, man, you need to, how about try volunteering at the hospital? There was a hospital down the street. from the campus, Alta Bates Medical Center. I think it's got a different name now. But at the time it was Alta Bates Medical Center. So she's like, give that a shot, go volunteer over there. So sure enough, she encouraged me, and she's like, you might find something you enjoy over there. So I did. I volunteered at Alta Bates Medical Center, and they placed me on the stroke unit. And I remember day one, early in the morning, the therapist comes out, it's like, hey, I'm going to need a little help. There's someone that we're going to be evaluating. Can you help me just like bring some equipment over and just like hang out in the room with us in case we need you to grab some stuff? It was my first day. I didn't know what I was doing. But I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I'm in, I'm all in. Let's check it out, see what's going on. So this therapist was there, and she was doing an evaluation for an individual who had recently had a stroke. And she goes up and tells the patient, Mr. So-and-so, we're going to get you up. We're going to get you out of bed. And the gentleman looks at her like, what are you talking about? Like we've all seen that look, an inpatient, that look,
Yep.
Patients look at you like you're crazy. Like you just, told them the wildest thing they've ever heard. And that's exactly the look that this gentleman had. But he's like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's try it. And sure enough, she, with assistance, was able to sit this gentleman up at the edge of the bed, stand him up, and he just starts bawling. He just like starts crying.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, like how powerful is that, And that was the moment. Like that was it. I was sold. Like physical therapy, neurology was perfect, right? Like that was like my childhood dream, really, was to do, brain research was my childhood dream. But now it's like, whoa, there's much more than that, right? Neurology is an entire field of physical therapy. And that instance right there, that was a turning point. After that, it was like, okay, well, I want to be a PT. That's what I want to do. And specifically, I want to work in neurology, and I want to have those same experiences that I just saw. I want to have that every day.
Right.
And here I am.
Here you are. And I think the biggest takeaway there is kind of like you mentioned, to get involved as a student, as a volunteer. Like those are the opportunities where you're just, ripe for knowledge, ripe for involvement, and you can really start to figure out what you do or what you don't want to do. Because like you said, it may not go the way you think it's going to go. So such a valuable experience introducing you into the field. When I met you and found out, because we met a couple of times, like through these online forums, through the CPTA, which we'll get through. I always wondered your story of getting into neuro as well too, and mine is a little bit similar. And I just felt like you probably felt in that moment that folks with neurologic impairments, obviously, it's a life-changing thing, and some of the most mundane things we take for granted become milestones, and it's just great to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And, just the emotion in that room when that happened, from the patient, and just how grateful that gentleman was to be able to do something that just 5 seconds ago he thought was just a crazy idea, could never be done. And that is what we bring to patients' lives,
Right.
We bring that hope. We bring that ability for folks to say, hey, man, I don't know if I can do it, but I have my physical therapist right here that thinks I can. So I'm just going to try my best, and we're going to make this happen, right? Our patients do that all the time. And that's the power, right, of what we do and of what the impact that we have on people's lives.
Yeah. A very, very influential, powerful, motivational type of aspect that goes along with, obviously the exercise prescription and the modalities and, the different types of things and assistive technologies that we use to get our folks going. Is just believing in them is the first step for sure. What were some struggles maybe that you went through, and this can be throughout the entire journey from childhood on to realizing, neurologic physical therapy was where you wanted to be, and how did you overcome some of these struggles?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about there, right? Again, how far back do you want to go? I just kind of shared my story, right? My immigrant story. And it's
Powerful.
tough, and being a 6-year-old kid transplanted to a new location, you don't speak the language, you don't have friends. And then, hey, you start school next week, and here I am, here you are, for me as a 6-year-old, is like first grade. You go in with all these kids that already know each other, and whether it's first grade or wherever you transfer in school, right, it's kind of the same thing. You always have groups of kids that already know each other. And then it's about like, okay, I stick out. I'm not like everybody else. Even though, culturally, the school that I went to, culturally, it was, very high percentage of, Latino kids, mostly Mexican American kids. But still, you stick out. I'm the one that just recently arrived to this country. I don't speak English. I don't know how to communicate with anybody. So there's that, just like a lot of, mocking and bullying that happened those first couple of years, just while you kind of get your feet underneath you and you start to, know people and, just kind of grow into yourself, and really understand who you are as a person. And I got to say, one of the things that I did learn from that experience is, you really understand what it feels like to be on that side of the coin. So as an adult, you know what it's like, when someone, is not being treated fairly. You know what it's like when, there's something, a disparaging remark made against somebody, like, what that feels like, and it wasn't fun going through that. But at the same time, on the positive side, it allows you to be empathetic towards others who are going through that struggle too.
Right.
So, just from a cultural standpoint, like that's kind of what I experienced. And after that, kids are kids. Eventually, you make friends and you really try to stand out and differentiate yourself from other people. And for me, it was through athletics, and it was through academics. How to, I was, again, because I was really invested in learning, I just try to soak everything up. But here's the thing, right? And we can get into a greater conversation about this, which I'm about to hit on a topic that, kind of a more serious topic about, the quality of the schooling eventually kind of shows itself, right? So I went through elementary school, junior high schools that I went to, kind of coasted through, quite honestly. Like, to me, it was pretty easy. Like, I got it. I didn't feel like it was challenging, so to speak, straight A student all the way throughout. And then in regards to the challenge, then I get to college, and you realize how little you actually know compared to everybody else.
Right.
You realize how little education you actually receive. And there were some tough lessons there, that first year of college. Going to classes, I remember I'll always remember this story, because this is kind of the start of the challenges that I had in undergraduate. I remember showing up to the first section of my freshman chemistry class, and the TA hands out a quiz and just says, hey, okay, this isn't going to be graded. I just want to get an idea of kind of where everybody is, what your background is and how much knowledge you have so far in terms of your chemistry knowledge. And, sure, I'm like, everyone here, I'm looking around, talking to some folks, everyone took AP chemistry, everyone, 4.0 plus,
Right.
student. I'm like, oh, I got this, I'm in the same boat as these people. I literally, dude, I shit you not, I grabbed this paper and I had no idea what they were asking on this little quiz that I'm getting on day one of my session. Right? I had no idea what they were asking. It was like I give you a sheet of paper and it's got a foreign language that you don't even understand, don't know how to read, or don't know what it is. That's kind of how I felt.
Wow.
And that's when I started realizing, oh damn, it just got real. Like, how valuable was my schooling, and here I am thinking, going into college, like, oh yeah, I'm a straight A student, AP classes, top of my class. I'll be able to compete with everybody, everyone is the same, but I'll be able to compete with them. Not a chance, man. Not a chance. And that was really when it started to come into perspective how, and again, and we don't have to go there, but speaking from a more global, social perspective, like, the environment that I grew up in really did not prepare me for this, right? The environment, the schooling, the resources, they did not prepare me for that.
And to your point, if you did not grow up in that environment, you do not fully understand it. It's very, very difficult to fully empathize with someone making that statement of like, look, this is the way it was, because we all want to think that everybody has the same opportunity. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of opportunities here in the United States. We know that. But there's also some discrepancies, and once you kind of put folks from different environments into the same type of situation, like a big college like Cal Berkeley, that stuff starts to come to the forefront.
Oh man. And then you start talking to people like, all right, well, you're in the dorms, like, oh yeah, so tell me about yours. Like, what classes did you take? And these kids are telling me, oh yeah, I had, 5, 6, 7 AP classes. And I'm like, dude, we had one, like, oh yeah, I went on this field trip, or I've done this. I had these extracurricular activities. And I'm like, I had none of that, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Oh yeah, I used to meet with my college counselor, and my parents went here, graduated from here. This is what they do for work. And I'm like, man, I never had any of that experience, So how am I supposed to compete here? But again, man, that drive, that desire to compete and to be better than everybody else, that's really what kept me going. Like, I could have quit at that point, failing every single midterm like that. I could have ended right there. I'm like, all right, I can't do this. I'm throw my hands up. I got to do something different. But
Right.
no, I had to see it through. I had started something. I had a goal, I had a vision for myself, and I needed to see it through. I didn't know how I was going to make it through, but I've also been somebody, an individual who's competitive, like I am, and I'm sure like you and many others. Like, we have a lot of faith in ourselves and our abilities, right? We know that no matter what, we'll figure it out, because I've had to
Yeah.
figure it out my entire life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that first year, I landed on academic probation as as expected. In hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where I belonged, given the
The
educational level where I
circumstances.
was at that point. Like, I kind of ended up in academic probation. But again, you know, then there's all these opportunities that open up, and opportunities to learn more about yourself, to learn more about, how truly committed you are to something, and to learn something new. And what I learned how to do because of that, I learned how to study better, right? I learned how to
Mm.
synthesize information better. I knew how to plan better. I knew how to take better notes, right? So that things made sense. I learned to ask better questions because now I had to go to office hours every day to make sure I understood everything, right?
Yeah.
When you're on the verge, man, you're willing to do a lot of things because you don't want to go over the edge, and you know and just essentially fail out of school, right? But then there's also a lot of other things that come on top of that. Again, being the first person in my family to go to college, there's a lot of pride in that.
Yes, there
It's like,
is.
man, I can't go home. Like, I can't quit this. Like, go home and say I couldn't do it. That wasn't an option. So you
Right.
you learn to adapt, and you learn what you have to do to take care of business. And that's what I did after that first year. And success just bred more success, right? And that's what we teach patients, right?
Right.
You get that small success, and that leads to another bigger one. Before you know it, like, you're on the right track. And I just had
On
to
the
be
right
methodical
track.
about it. Yep, I
Mm-hmm.
had to be methodical about it. I had to ask questions. I had to really humble myself, to seek out help. Um, and I took care of business, and I made it out. I had a great GPA, applied to PT school, and the rest is history, really. I would say that the struggles that I experienced getting through undergraduate, um, really helped me succeed in graduate school, because
Mm.
by then I knew the skills I needed to be successful, right? The
Yeah,
planning, the studying, all that stuff.
and let's talk about that a little further, actually, because there's another added element that I wanted to ask you. Um, kid from Guatemala, transplants to LA, all the differences going on there. Kid from LA, transplants to Boston, everything that all that
Yeah.
difference was there. So I mean, you're finding out about brand new environments that are totally different from the environment you were experienced prior. You
Yeah.
go to Boston University, physical therapy program, boom boom, like you said, learned a lot about yourself, overcame a lot of struggles in undergrad. How was that Boston move?
It was a culture shock for sure. But again, it was just another situation, another scenario where I chose to put myself in an uncomfortable position. I chose to extend myself and extend outside of my comfort zone because I had a lot of confidence in myself and I knew that I could do it, you know? So Boston was really about exploration. It's really, that's really what it was. It was and continues to be a great program. Shout out to my BU alum and BU students out there, BU faculty. I keep in touch with a lot of them. So shout out to all the BU community. But again, it was one of those things where I just wanted to experience something different. I wanted to see a part of the world that I had not experienced before. And I wanted to put myself in that position and see how am I going to make it out of there, you know? Give myself that little bit of challenge, right? To keep my drive going and to keep my competitive spirit flowing, right? So I make it out to Boston. Definite culture shock. Very, very different community. I when I first moved out there, I subletted a room for the summer. School in Boston started in the summer at the time, so I subletted a room. I'm living in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is a pretty well-off community, right? Definitely not something that I was used to on the West Coast, Brookline. Yeah, I mean, finding a community was challenging, finding folks that looked like me. But at the same time, I was kind of also used to that, right? I've always kind of been a little bit of an outsider, from the moment I stepped, foot in the United States, to some of the activities that I enjoyed doing growing up, like gaming, which we got to talk about, by the way. Gaming, the music I listened to, the things that I enjoy doing. I mean, I've always been someone that doesn't quite match the profile or the description of what you expect, right? We'll talk a little bit about, my athletic pursuits like triathlon. Like, you don't see a lot of people who look like me who do triathlons. You don't see a lot of people who look like me who do trail running. But again, Boston was one of those experiences where now I got to identify community and I have to adapt. The culture shock, it was more like a kick in the pants, really, man. It was like seeing firsthand what outright like racism looks like. Like, I experienced that in Boston, like outright, like people unashamedly going up to you and be like, hey, F you, go back to where you freaking came from, kind of a thing. Not in such nice a word or tone or demeanor. That's the first time I ever experienced that, being out in California, grew up in a pretty homogeneous community, right? I mean, so didn't really see much of that. But then as an adult going out there and like actually having people come up to you and like pointing you out because I stood out. I mean, look at me. I mean, I don't look like anything else but what I am, right? I can't pass for anything else. And I'm very proud of that, by the way. I'm not saying that in a disparaging manner. I'm very proud of what I am and who I am. But to have people point that out and come up to your face and tell it to your face, it's like, man, how do you handle that? I've never experienced that before, right? But you learn to deal with it just like everybody else, and you learn to identify folks that are going to have your back, and that's what I had out there. I found a group of people, and we had our back, and we had to stick together and make it through, not just from an academic standpoint, because as you know, and I've heard on some of your past episodes, folks talk about how difficult PT school was, right? We having to overcome that challenge, then having to overcome just the fact that, certain places of the city, you're just simply not welcome and people let you know. So that was a source of struggle there. But at the same time, I had a lot of confidence in myself, and after you deal with this every time, I mean, I've looked like this my whole life, right? It wasn't the first time. This was just like the most aggressive time,
right?
That somebody had told me something like that. You learn to deal, you learn to brush stuff off. You understand that, hey, you know what? This person's has their own perspective, and they've never seen anybody that looks like me. Maybe they haven't experienced someone with my intellect or with my skill set, and they just have this assumption, like many people do, and they're just expressing it. The best I could do is like walk away, leave them be. I'm not going to try to fight them, like, and just move along and do your thing. Be as successful as you can be. That's all I got to do.
And having that kind of maturity to have that approach, because it's very easy to meet aggression with aggression, but then you become the stereotype if you let that
Right.
overcome you, right? It's kind of a lose-lose for you.
Oh man, and it's something that we deal with all the time. I mean, I don't know about you. I'll share my personal experience. Like, yeah, that's one of the things that I've always been very mindful of. You know, is you don't want to be the stereotype. What can I do to make sure that I represent myself well, that I represent my family well, that I and now in my professional life that I represent our profession well. So that's something that's always in the back of my mind whenever I enter a new situation, a novel situation where perhaps I don't quite fit in. I want to make sure that I'm giving the best of myself and the best impression that I can put forward.
Right. Oscar Gallardo, representing himself well, representing his family well, representing the profession well, and representing the Parallax Effect podcast well. Did any or all or some of those experiences lead you to becoming an advocate within more of the legislative realm of physical therapy?
I would say probably my childhood experiences more than anything. So as working at Rancho, I've been at Rancho like 20 years now, 21 almost. That community that we serve at Rancho is the community where I grew up, right? And I tell this to people all the time. And, in terms of the advocacy piece, I experienced what many of our patients experience, the long wait times, showing up to clinic and there's just no resources to provide what you need. Like I experienced that because I grew up in that system, right? And so for me, I think that is the biggest inspiration as to why I work there, why I advocate for the profession, because I've lived it. I always tell people, that they ask me like, why are you here? Why are you at Rancho for so many years? And I say, when I look out in that waiting room, I'm seeing myself. I'm seeing myself and my mom who took the day off of work, trying to get services, and what it's like to go to a community clinic, which we had to do all the time, for our shots, for our healthcare, for everything, to go to these community clinics and you walk in and you're like person number 500, there's no way you're going to get services. Right. And I know the challenge that my parents had, needing to take a day off to be able to take care of some of those things. And, for me, that's where the advocacy piece comes from, right? Because I know what it's like to live in those communities, because I lived it. I understand the challenges that people have because we had those challenges. And I understand what it takes to try to overcome them. And sometimes, yes, your grit, your desire, your drive can take you very far. But sometimes you also need some resources and you need some help and you need someone to lend you that helping hand and stick up for you and say, hey, listen, I'm going to help you out. Like, this is what I can do for you. So, let me help you and let's see what I can do to help you. And that's what I hope to bring, every day when I show up to work.
And it is what you bring every day when you show up to work and to every single conference, meeting, anything that has to do with the profession on the legislative side of things. And we know, we understand, obviously, you painted a very great picture of why you came to care so much about advocacy and legislative for the profession. Why should all physical therapists care about that?
Oh man, there's so many different angles to that question. When I was kind of prepping for this, I was just kind of thinking about some of these, how to talk about some of those things. And there's a lot of different angles, right? You can take a more personal angle, like the way I just described, right? I have a personal experience and I understand the importance of being able to handle and change and improve some of the conditions that our patients experience, right? So for me, I guess, you can call it selfishness, I guess. It's a little bit of that, but just this passion for ensuring that that we help to right the wrongs that are out there, essentially, right? From a more global perspective, I think of what I do every day. And the reason that I get to do what I do every day is because there are folks, right, who say I can. There are laws that say that I can. But then you start thinking like, well, who writes these laws? And why were these laws written the way they were written? And most likely, right, they were written because the people who wrote them spoke to a group of individuals that told them this is how this needs to happen, because they probably had an agenda for why things needed to happen the way they do. And you can say that about all of our society. right? So I think to myself, okay, every day, and those of you out there practicing physical therapists, when you step into your clinic in the morning, why do what makes it so that you can treat patients? What makes it so that you can bill and receive payment for the services you receive? Well, it's because there are laws in place that allow you to do that, right? And if we don't work to change and constantly improve those laws, our situation won't change either, and the lives of our patients won't change, right? So you can take it either from a very local, personal or institutional or clinic perspective, or you can take it to a much global perspective, right?
Mm.
We have a voice, right? And we have a very powerful voice, and what we do is important to a lot of people. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why for every single one of us, it's very important for us to be involved in the legislative process, because we want to have control over how we live our lives, over how we help our patients, and not delegate that to somebody else who perhaps does not have as much experience, expertise, or knowledge about what we do, you know? Um,
Right.
and that's really, for PTs, that's what it comes down to, right? Who do you want making decisions on your behalf? Do you want to have a role in that? Or do you want somebody up in Sacramento or in DC who maybe has never stepped foot in our communities or in our clinics or in our hospitals making decisions for us, right? Personally, I think I'm the best person to provide that perspective, right? I think you're the best person to provide that perspective. And I think that clinic owner who's out there is the best person to provide that perspective, right? And if we all, come together and help us to advocate and speak out and make sure that we have a seat at that table and that we have a voice, that's step number one. Everything else will fall in line after that.
Right. And along those same lines, how do we reach? Because I think so many folks who have entered the profession, right? Like you don't enter physical therapy to be a congressman. That's not under our umbrella, or a state senator or whatever. There's different professions that are kind of linked with those titles. I would like to see more healthcare professionals trying to fill some of those seats, even though that's not quite down the road that maybe we envisioned when we took up the profession, right? And so, how do we raise awareness amongst folks who, hey man, I'm just trying to go, put in my not necessarily my 9 to 5, but put in my hours and do my thing and come home and see my family. A little bit of that, like you just mentioned, like why are you able to do that? Somebody had to, legislatively make those connections for you to be able to do that. But how do we come back and reach those folks, or can we?
Yeah, man. Well, I think we can. I believe we can. I believe that, so first and foremost, venues like this, right, where we're educating folks about the importance of taking action and being involved in the legislative process. This is one step right here, just going out and talking to folks, right? We do it every single day that we talk to our peers, right? We can do that every single time, and we can point out opportunities, right, to be able to get involved. It doesn't have to be, something massive. And I tell my students this all the time, or when I lecture about legislation or advocacy, I say this all the time, like, you don't have to do what I do, right? You don't have to go and meet with your legislator, locally, or you don't have to go to DC and do that. I personally enjoy doing that, but you don't have to even do that. You can send an email. You can follow your legislator on social media. You can show up, to coffee with the community that somebody may have in your neighborhood and just listen in and just say hello, right? Um, there's a lot of different ways to get involved. It does not have to be, these massive time commitments, right? But the ultimate and the primary focus here should be on making sure that everybody has at least an understanding of how those two things relate to each other. It's like our patients, Ryan. It's like there are many times where we are working with a patient, right? And you've done this many times, I'm sure. What exercises are going to help this individual get better, and your recommendation is, hey, let's go ahead and do these exercises. If your patient doesn't understand the connection between what you're asking them to do and the end goal of what they want to achieve, they're not going to do those exercises, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty simplistic example, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. They're not going to do it. we haven't made the link with them. We haven't made the connection and explained how A leads to B, right? And I think for our peers, we kind of have the same problem sometimes, right? Where folks don't quite understand why something that we're talking about in Sacramento influences their ability to provide services right here, right now. Right. And I think all of us
Right.
as advocates, we have to be better about it. And at the same time, we have to be respectful, because the other thing we know about, patients is that people have to be ready to receive the information we need to deliver. And sometimes we have to modify our message. Sometimes we have to be patient and, try and try again, so to speak, until people are ready to hear us. But we have to be ready to also take them in and accept them when they reach that point where they're finally ready to hear the message, right? So it's a daily chore for all of us, right? Every time that we talk to our folks, trying to help them understand, it's a daily struggle.
And definitely one committed to making even incremental progress on every day after day after day. The more folks that we can reach as well too, and kind of keeping. So I want to say for the folks out there, real quick, therapists, physical therapists, even occupational therapists or whoever, if you may be watching, and this is something that's been on your mind, and you want to know who to reach out to or kind of know how to make that connection, leave a comment. Oscar and I will grab it. One of us or both of us will grab it, get back to you. We'll leave Oscar's social connects in the show description as well. We'll cover them at the end of the show as well too. So you can definitely just reach out and ask some questions and get some answers as well. So I just wanted to put that little public disclaimer out there, Oscar. But
always available, man. I'm always available to talk to people.
And this is perfect evidence of that, right? We met one day. We were at Sean Johnson in his engagement party, which was a very fantastic event. So congrats to Sean and Christina.
Yeah, congrats to Sean.
And we were there chatting it up, and I was like, man, would you like to come on the podcast? And within an instant, let's do it. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So yes, this is evidence of you always being available for sure. And we appreciate you again here at the Parallax Effect podcast. Kind of giving our folks some information if they don't know, what are some of the current bills or issues that are working their way either through Assembly or Senate or what have you?
Oh man, thanks for that question. We have a really important bill right now that is on the governor's desk awaiting signature, right? This is really important. So for those of you out there who may not be physical therapists, right? Just to give you just very quick, background. One of the challenges that we have in our profession, as well as other healthcare professions, you mentioned OTs, you mentioned speech therapists. This is kind of a problem across the entire healthcare, arena, is the fact that the payment for our services, right, is significantly lower than many times the cost that it takes a therapist to deliver those services. The payment has not changed very much for many years. And so as things get more and more expensive, the cost of doing business continues to increase, but our student loans aren't getting any cheaper, right? Rents aren't getting any cheaper. Electricity bill is not getting any cheaper. And so, clinics and private practice owners, they're forced to make hard decisions, right? Can I really afford, right? And this is where the advocacy and the population that I work with come in. Can I really afford as a clinic owner to provide care to these individuals that have a certain type of payment that's not going to be enough to cover my cost, right? We don't want people to have to make that decision, right? We don't want patients to have to miss out on needed vital therapy services because we don't have a way to pay for those things. The richest country in the world does not have the ability to provide some basic needs for our patients. Like, that's just not right. Part of the reason why I like to mention to people where I was born is because some of these things that we think can never happen here in the United States is happening in the United States. And this issue about healthcare access is happening in the United States. And a large part of it has to do with the way payment for healthcare is structured, right? So one of the important bills that we brought forward this year, is Assembly Bill 931, right? That's the bill number, Assembly Bill 931. And basically what this bill says is, hey, if you have physical therapy services that are part of your existing uh, insurance plan, right? The insurance should not be able to force you to get extra authorization so that you can access those services and get the care you need, right? That shouldn't happen. These are services that you've already paid for as part of your plan. So why does the patient have to jump through all these hoops, right, in order for you to be able to access those services? This doesn't apply to physical therapy, right? A lot of you out there, right? Perhaps you, Ryan, or some of your other listeners, you've had, woken up one time with neck pain or back pain or sprain your ankle. And think of how challenging it is for you to actually go and get those things taken care of. If you have to jump through all these hoops, your provider has to write letters and letters to the insurance company to say, yes, you can you can use your therapy services that you've already paid us for. I don't see the logic of that, right? And so for a lot of our patients, especially my patients, there's a huge delay in being able to initiate that care that you need to get back to life, right? That authorization process, it's hell, man. It's time consuming. A lot of times there's multiple cycles that have to happen in order for a person to get authorized for the services they need. And we just don't think that's the right thing to do. So Assembly Bill 931, which we have been successful and have kind of navigated this to the legislative process. It's waiting for Governor Newsom to sign this bill. Governor Newsom signed this bill, would basically say the initial 12 visits that you have as part of your plan, you don't need any pre-authorization for that, right? You go see a physical therapist, you can start therapy right away, and there's no extra hoops to jump through. Your insurance will cover those 12 visits, right? It's a simple bill. Essentially, let's get people started. Let's give patients access to the therapy services that they deserve, that they've paid for, right? Without needing to jump through extra hoops that delays their care and results in secondary complications, right? We all know that happens, right? You delay care for a little bit, something else is going to go wrong because you're compensating for an injury that you already have, right? So we're saying, hey, that's not fair. Why should patients suffer when they've already when they are constantly paying for these services that they're not getting access to? And Assembly Bill 931, man, we got to write letters to the governor. That's really where we are right now. We have been fighting this one tooth and nail from the very beginning, through the Assembly, through the Senate, and we finally got it to Governor Newsom's desk. We got to write letters. That's my plug for today. We got to let them know, not just physical therapists either, right? Everybody. You may not need those healthcare services right now, but somebody may need them. You may need them in the future. And, this is something that's going to be in place to ensure that whenever you need those services, you're not going to get any unnecessary delays in getting the PT services you need. So that's the one we've been fighting all year. It's been a long struggle, but we finally got it to the governor's desk. We want to get it through the finish line. If you don't mind, Ryan, in your show notes, I will give people the link,
please,
for how they can send a letter to the governor. Exactly.
Yep.
We're expecting this, or we're hoping that this will be signed, but we need voices. We need the people to rise and be like, hey, this is something that is important for all of us. And here's my opinion, and this is why you should sign this bill, Assembly Bill 931, Ryan. That's the one. Tell your people.
Governor Gavin Newsom, if you or any of your affiliates happening to be listening, knock, knock. Guess who's there? It's the Parallax Effect podcast. On your desk when you check into work is going to be Assembly Bill number 931. We're going to go ahead and need you to sign that for us real quick, if you don't mind. And if you don't happen to listen, don't worry. Some letters will be coming up in our behalf, straight up to Sacramento, direct shipping, right? We're not messing around. Please, yeah. So let's let's leave the information. We will leave that information in the show description, so you know exactly how to send your concerns, your letters up north to Sacramento for us, so we can continue to advocate to get our folks the attention that they deserve, and more importantly, and just as importantly, the attention that they already paid for. You heard it here. Oscar Gallardo came, bringing the most direct information possibly. Are there any other also current bills happening, or some for the near future that we need to be aware of, or is there somewhere that people can get that information?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of current bills, you mentioned part of my role with California Physical Therapy Association is on the Government Affairs Committee. Man, we that committee is a hardworking committee, right? Every legislative cycle, there are just hundreds and hundreds of bills that are introduced. What we do in that committee, with the help, we don't do this by ourselves. We have staff that are just amazing. Our staff are so amazing. To shout out to CPTA staff, we could not do our work without you. So every staff member at CPTA, thank you so much for all you do for us. We essentially sort through all these bills, and we figure out which ones apply to healthcare, which ones apply to the populations we serve. So at any time of year, we're probably tracking 100 to 200 bills to see where this is going. So where do you find that information? If you go to the CPTA website, ccapta.org, on the advocacy page there, you will see a list of bills that we are tracking. Some of the important ones that we are really driving this year has to do with credentialing physical therapists and occupational therapists who work in the school system, right? Who want to rise into administrative positions, right? They need a specific administrative credential. Current law says that a PT and OT cannot obtain that, and so we were trying to change the law so to allow folks who want to move into those positions to be able to do it. So that's one that's that's still out there. We had some challenges with it stalling in one of the committees, but hopefully we keep the momentum going. Another bill that we have been working on has to do with animal rehab. Many people don't know physical therapists treat animals as well, not just humans.
That's
so
right.
We've been supporting a bill out there that would kind of change that situation there. So hopefully that one will keep moving forward. Every year, we are always looking for opportunities to make sure that patients have access to healthcare, the healthcare they deserve. And so going into next year, next year is also an election year, so it'll be interesting to see how things shape up out there. So those are some of the things that we've been working on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Oscar, for doing this work, for keeping us informed, for advocating for us, even when we kind of don't know as much as maybe we would like to, or maybe we should. We can help. You've been helping us obtain all that crucial, vital piece of information. So thank you so much for that. Along the same lines, I'm gonna stick here for one more question, then we'll kind of have some fun a little bit. But I really want to make sure that we capture all this convo and this information. Chapter dues, APTA dues, they obviously come up every year. We encourage folks to be a member. The fees sometimes can be somewhat of a deterrent for some folks. Where do those fees go? Why should folks keep opting in to be members of the APTA and for California chapter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great question, Ryan. It's one that we hear all the time, right? People, when we ask people, hey, why aren't you a member? Join us. Oh man, it's too expensive, right? That's usually the typical response, is very expensive. And my thought process when I hear that is it really, is it really that expensive? How much is too expensive? Like, how much is too much to pay for your livelihood, right? That's really where it comes down for me. How much is your livelihood worth to you? Understand that, the dues are used for a variety of things. A large portion of, what we do with those dues is ensure that we can continue to do the work and advocating so that people can keep showing up to work and people can keep, treating patients. And so our staff works, man, year round to make some of these things happen, right? From the advocacy standpoint, making sure that we are always on the lookout for any issue that arises that can either, take away some of our rights as physical therapists, or for opportunities to enhance the access to patient care that we can provide, right? So from a government legislation piece, a significant portion goes to that. The other thing that's important for us as a profession is making sure that people know what we do, right? So from a PR perspective, right, PR marketing, we have taken on over the last several years, some pretty robust like marketing campaigns to educate legislators, to educate patients, to educate other providers about the value of physical therapy, right? So think about it, right? If you're a private practice owner, right? How do you get patients referred to you? Well, you go out and you meet your local physician or referral source and you say, hey, I just opened up a clinic down the street. This is what I do. This is my expertise. Send me your patients. We'd love to treat them, right? People do that all the time on a one-on-one basis. Well, for us and as an association, we have to do that more globally, right? And, it takes resources to be able to do that and be able to educate folks and always be present so that our profession is represented appropriately in any venue, right? And so we spend a lot of resources educating folks about what we do as part of our profession, right? So those are some of the initiatives that we take on. Keep in mind also, right, we have to do some of the work of the association that benefits all of us. We do have to do, an assembly of representatives that, helps guide the direction of the profession. We take on other initiatives to make sure that, we are growing as a profession and that we're growing in recognition. We have several committees involved with ensuring that payment is appropriate. We have a diversity affairs committee that's looking at how do we improve from a diversity, equity, inclusion piece within our association, but also with the outreach that we do, ensuring that our physical therapist community, right, becomes more diverse to more fully represent the patients that we serve. Right. I know I've listened back to some of your past episodes, and this issue of diversity, not just in physical therapy, but in healthcare has come up a lot. Right. So we're trying to do our part as well. Right. Going out to elementary schools, going out to middle schools, high schools, colleges, and letting people know, hey, here we are. And by the way, we also have leaders within our profession that look like you. It's possible for you to become a physical therapist. Man, I wish I would have had that. I wish I would have had that earlier on in my career, right? I told you my story about how I discovered PT. The thing I didn't tell you is that for me, it took until the second semester of my junior year at Cal to discover this amazing field of physical therapy. I wish someone would have told me about it, right? Right? Same thing, right? I wish somebody would have told me about it in elementary school so that I can start thinking of myself, filling those shoes, that somebody who looked like me would have come to my classroom and be like, hey, I sat in that same chair that you're sitting in right now, and you can do it yourself too. Those are some of the initiatives that our diversity affairs committee, right, is trying to take on as well. Right. So, man, there's a lot to do, right? And it's a year-round effort from our staff and from our volunteers. All of us volunteer for this, right? We don't get paid for this. We volunteer because we love it so much.
Exactly. And so you heard it here from Oscar Gallardo first, where your PT dues are going. And as a person who is paying their dues, you deserve to be able to ask that question as well, too, to any person in such as Oscar himself or any of his contemporaries that do this work, to give you a very genuine answer to make you feel a little bit more confident about how your dollars are protecting the profession. So thank you so much for that answer, Oscar. We're going to move forward a little bit, and I want to invite you to a segment that we call Light Speed. It's a kind of a pseudo rapid fire thing. Sometimes it's rapid, sometimes it might not be. But would you like to participate, Oscar?
I've been looking forward to this segment. So bring it on. Bring it on, Ryan.
Bring it on. We are moving towards Light Speed with Oscar Gallardo here on the Parallax Effect podcast. Here we go. We talked about the discovery, your love for running when you were younger. What's the longest run competition you've ever completed?
I did a 50K. I did a 50K run, which is a little over 31 miles up in San Francisco, Marin, basically starting over in Crissy Field, crossing Golden Gate Bridge, across over to Marin and running all up in there. and back. So it was about 31 miles. That's the longest individual race I've done. It's not the longest distance I've done as a athletic competition, because I did complete an Ironman last year. So
you did. Tell me about that
part. I did. Oh man, it was one of those. It was one of those things that just lingered forever. I've always been someone that likes to set goals. One of my goals in 2019 was to complete an Ironman in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I signed up for that Ironman in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. The world shut down. So what was supposed to be an Ironman that I wanted to complete in 2020, because of multiple shutdowns, delays, postponements in the race, I actually didn't end up doing it until last November. It was amazing, because it really again, I learned something from it about myself and about my ability to just, truck along and continue and stick to that goal. But I also learned a new skill. Actually, I learned a new skill with it. This is I don't think we've ever talked about this, but I always, every year I'm like, okay, what am I going to work on this year? And back then, one of my new skills was I wanted to learn how to swim. Right? I didn't really know how to swim. I knew how to tread water.
Right. Really?
So I'm
okay.
like, man, how am I gonna like force myself to learn how to swim? So like, I have this great idea. Maybe I'll start doing triathlon, because triathlons, you got to know how to swim. So that's how I learned to swim. So I'm like, okay, well, if I need to do a triathlon, I guess I'd better learn how to swim. So I did it, right? So you start with like little races, short distances, and as you get more into it and you learn, like everything else, you learn and you get more intrigued by it, and you learn more of the intricacies of a sport or a skill or whatever it is that you're into, right? It could be anything. You learn more and more about it. You just get hooked, right? So what started at just wanting to learn how to swim eventually led to me saying like, man, I want to do an Ironman. I want to do a full on Ironman, because it would just be a great personal achievement for me. It had nothing to do with anybody else. It was just a personal achievement, something that was going to make me proud of my accomplishment of learning to swim. And so I did it.
Ironman, Oscar Gallardo in the Parallax Effect podcast. Take that, Tony Stark. Got a chance to meet your lovely wife, Erin, a couple weeks ago at the engagement party we were just speaking about. Very infectious smile, a tremendous individual. She is also a runner. Is that correct?
She is a runner. She, she is yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot as you answer. Who is the better runner, you or your wife?
Are you talking speed or distance?
Let's go distance.
She's the better runner, for sure.
She is the better runner.
Hands
indeed.
down.
And
Absolutely.
I cut you off. I think you had a couple more comments to say. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
No, not at all. She's the better runner, period.
Yeah. Excellent. And you guys do these long runs together. You go backpacking. When is your next backpacking trip?
Man, we do. We love doing that. It's kind of become, as I've, kind of progressed in my training, and if you've ever trained for, a race like this, like those of you out there who've done, these types of races, no, man, that's all you do sometimes. So there were days where that was our only chance to interact with each other, like, all right, I got a long run. Like, you want to come with? All right, so let's go. We'll do it. And, she's an ultra runner, right? So she likes to do, 50Ks as well. And she's working her way up to, eventually a 50 miler, eventually a 100 miler. Like, that's what she likes to do. So we had that interest. So now it's become like a family thing, we go on, trail runs, we bring the dog along, and we just have a great time. We do a lot. That's become one of our family experiences that we have as much as we're able to. Our next trip actually is something new we're doing. Again, learning something new all the time. A couple months ago, I learned about this, new trend called fast packing. I mean, I don't know how new it is, but to me it was new. Fast packing, right? Basically, people like to go backpacking. They carry these big, heavy backpacks and just walk for miles and miles. But Erin likes to trail run. So it's like, well, this is perfect because we can combine the two, right? Fast packing basically combines backpacking and trail running. You instead of walking out and going, with these big, heavy packs, the whole purpose is how little can you pack? How little can you pack, because you're going to go trail running while you're doing this. And so you just go out as far as you can. You camp overnight. You come on back. Some people do it for multiple days. So we're going out tomorrow. On our first fast packing trip. We have lofty goals of how long we think we can go, but reality would probably hit at some point and be like, damn, this is harder than we thought. That's usually what happens. So we'll see what happens. We're going out on a trip tomorrow, just an overnighter, because it's the first time we're doing this. So we're trying new gear, we're trying a new experience, making sure that we have kind of all of our skill set that we need so that we can start going on longer and longer fast packing trips.
Wow. The only fast packing story that I can even relate to is just fast running through the airport with my check-in luggage because I'm about to be late for my flight. So that's the only fast packing.
That's usually me. Usually me too.
That's my MO right there, man. But look forward to hearing what a great time you all would have. Look forward to learning about fast packing in case that's something I could ever attempt with my fiance as well too. We like to run, but that is a whole nother level. I see the vintage t-shirt on here right now, the Nintendo controller. So I know you're a gamer. We mentioned it earlier. You want to start off telling me about the shirt or start off with your favorite video game?
I had to wear this just for you because in listening and going back to your old episodes, I didn't know that about you either. I didn't know you were a gamer. And I found this out going back and listening to your podcast episodes after you told me, hey, I got this podcast. So I started listening, and this is something that comes up. There's a couple things about you I didn't know. One of which was, so I had to wear this for you, man.
Yeah.
Classically trained, got the Nintendo controller.
Trained. Yep.
That's right.
Up,
it's
down, left, right, A, B, start, cheat code.
Yep.
I love it,
that's
man.
Right.
I love it.
Contra. That's right. Unlimited Lives on Contra. That's a good one. Yep. I love that game. That was one of my games right there. Contra. Obviously big, Mario, Super Mario fan. Tyson's Punch Out. I mean, all the classics, right? Those are great.
Yes.
I still game. I mean, I still game as much as I can. You read kind of all the stuff that I'm into, so I don't always have the time to do it, but I try to make time. I have, I have my Switch right now. I'm trying to work my way through Zelda. So I'm trying to do that. I love it. That's kind of my favorite games, and that's kind of what I do. I love open world adventure games, right? That's really one of my favorite franchises is Fallout.
Yep.
So, just kind of being out in this open world and exploring and learning new stuff, man. Everything that I do in my own life and trying to figure out how things work and exploring, I do it in video games.
Right. Well, so. And that you mentioned Zelda as well too. Ocarina of Time, I think it's for Nintendo 64, was like one that blew my world wide open of like where this, gaming realm could go as well. So that's one of my top 5 games. For me, it was
Metroid,
games.
By the way, the original Metroid.
Oh, definitely.
That game. Woo, boy.
Yeah. That game it just stands the test of time. So yeah, we need. Do you do? You get a lot online, or do you kind of do your own thing, or how do you roll?
Not as much online anymore. Not opposed to it. Again, I just don't have the time. So a lot of time I just have short gaming sessions, and those rare days where I have a lot of time, I kind of want to get through my games, so I don't do a lot on time online anymore.
Yeah. Well, if the opportunity ever presents
I am there
itself,
though. I do PlayStation. So.
Okay, yeah. So I need to revamp my whole because I'm doing the switch over from Xbox to PlayStation myself. So as soon as I revamp it, let's meet online and lay the smacketh down on those who don't know what is coming. You know what I'm saying? No, that is awesome, phenomenal. Do you have a favorite with being HIPAA compliant? Do you have a favorite patient memory experience that you can share?
I do, man. This was very early on in my career. I was working, and again, we'll be HIPAA compliant. We know that. I was working with an individual, post-stroke. Had a really challenging stay, and making great progress. This was the first person, because I was again very young in my career. I would say maybe a couple months into my career. Great experience with this individual. She taught me a lot, right? She taught me a lot about how to communicate with folks, how to motivate people. And she just gave me so much knowledge, man. about being a clinician and how to be a better clinician, right? Which is what I'm always striving to do. So this person had a really rough go, throughout her entire stay. Gets discharged, does the outpatient realm thing. And several months later, I get an invitation to this person's wedding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. I'm going to get to see, this patient. And I was able to experience, right, from what I saw in the inpatient side, the fact that this person had gotten back to life, that this person had pursued her dream of, marrying someone who she'd have a really lengthy, relationship with, and the fact that she was able to walk down the aisle and gave me a shout out for helping her achieve that goal, right? I was a couple months into my, into my professional career, and having that type of achievement and, in your face, like, this is what you can do for people type of experience is life-changing,
Life-changing.
That's one that I remember from early on in my career for sure.
That is powerful for sure. All you aspiring PTs out there, this is the impact that you can have. I mean, this is what we do. This is what, we train so hard. This is what we go through undergrad and spend hours in, teachers' office hours, and then head over to PT school and do the same thing all over again, magnified by 100,000, whatever difficulty it is, to provide moments just like that, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. How many PT legislative bills have you kind of either been a part of or contributed to, approximately?
Oh, man. It's tough to say, right? Because in terms of crafting bills, we craft just a handful of bills over the course of my involvement. But we have input over, several bills because everything comes through our committee, right? And the great thing about what we do in our committee is that, it's an open forum. Everyone gets to provide their perspective on, the impact of a particular piece of legislation. So if you consider that I've been on that committee now maybe about 5 or 6 years or so, and every year we're tracking about 100, 120, 150 bills. I mean, that's a lot of input, right? That we get to have feedback on. Now, not all of them, essentially not all of them make the cut, so to speak, right? Not all of them get voted on and eventually proceed. So I would say maybe about a dozen or so bills that finally, make it out that we actually have to go out there and meet with legislators and lobby for. I definitely would say like several dozen of those. I definitely have been an active participant in trying to lobby, for or against a particular piece of legislation.
Awesome. Excellent. And kind of changing lanes just a little bit. One answer for this one. If you recommend one destination that someone takes a vacation to, where is that?
Japan.
And you gave me the itinerary, and we haven't gone yet, but we have pretty much formatted. So we opted for Costa Rica because it was a little bit more, economical at this time. But that is something that we definitely plan to cash in on, hopefully next year or the year after. So we are going to use each and every recommendation.
Japan was one of those things. I think I mentioned this to you, right? Again, having grown up gaming, right?
Classically trained.
What do I remember? What do I remember from every time I finished a game was just like the credits. The credits. I remember being a little kid and like watching those credits. I'm like, whoa, like where, like why, like how are they making such wonderful devices and in this country of Japan that I had never heard of before. And ever since I was a little kid, I was like, I need to go there. Like, here I am, a little kid in the 80s, like playing through these video games that were made in a foreign land that I'd never heard of or seen. Like that was always my childhood dream, to go to Japan, and it lived up, man. Everything about that country I just love. The people are amazing. The food, of course, is incredible. It was like, especially Tokyo for me, it was like, man, like I just like teleported into the future. Like it was just an amazing experience that I had there. And the other cool part about Japan, actually, and I don't think I told you this part, for me personally, I actually have a cousin who lives in Tokyo. So he's lived there for many years. And when I went to Japan, I got the opportunity to reconnect with a family member, my cousin, who I had not seen since we were about like 5 years old. So it was a great experience all around.
And we will hopefully be sharing the same type of stories. I don't have any family in Tokyo, but I'd like to make some close associated friends, once we get over there as well too. So we will definitely be cross-referencing our trip with you. Oscar Gallardo, thank you so much again for coming in. Last question that I do have, and it is kind of in honor of your arrival, Halloween 1982. What is your most memorable Halloween costume?
Ooh, that's a tough one. We've had some good ones because at Rancho, like we take that stuff seriously.
Yes,
Halloween
yes.
is a serious business at Rancho. We have, full on. Everyone's like full on costume departments do their thing. Yeah, it's great. There's been a couple. Just a super fun one. I was Speedy Gonzalez one year. Kind of fits my personality, Speedy Gonzalez.
Apropos.
Yeah, man. But my favorite one, Slash.
Wow.
Guns N' Roses.
You gotta have some pictures of that one. You gotta have some pictures of that one. I will share some
pictures with you. Maybe, I don't know. I don't mind you sharing them. Put them on the notes so people can see my Slash costume. I'm really proud of that one.
I definitely will do that for sure. Wow, Oscar Gallardo, man, what a great conversation. Definitely learned a ton. Always, I try to recap with what we learned. Man, I can't even begin to tell you how much I learned about you and how much I actually really learned about my own profession through your eyes, right? Through your experience, and just diving in further to some of the aspects and things that you advocate for us as practitioners as well, too, man. Recap on your end, man. How did it go today?
Oh man, it was amazing. It was just amazing to be able to share with everybody. Kind of first and foremost, I was just shocked. And this is related to, I'm not going off on a tangent. It actually relates to your question. In listening back to your episodes, just the variety of guests that you've had, man, it's so amazing that people from kind of all different professions. Like it's incredible. And one of the things that I really enjoyed, being here today is that I get to educate other people about physical therapists, non-physical therapists about physical therapy and what we do and why I love it. Right. So, I mean, just listening and prepping for this by listening to your podcast, man, has taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. Wrestling, dude, I didn't know you were such a huge wrestling fan. And listening to your episodes about wrestling, like I learned a lot. I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot on my way home today. Actually, I was listening to a past episode, and I so apologize. I forgot this young lady's name. She's the actress. Artist,
Victoria Vertuga.
Victoria. Yeah. So I learned a lot, I learned a lot from her just about the industry. Right. And the issues going on right now with the Screen Actors Guild, and everything that's going on with that. Like I learned a lot about that. And so just being able to be here, man, I learned a lot. I learned one more thing actually listening to your former episodes. Ball pythons was one of your sponsor breeders.
Yep.
I love that because I used to have pythons when I was a kid. Growing up, me and my brother used to have pythons, so I love pythons.
There you go, man. We got another vote right there, and it's so excellent to hear because that was one of the topics that we definitely discussed. With some folks are still a little bit maybe scared of snakes or have this kind of negative connotation. And going into that kind of business, you start to be able to address that full force. So, Oscar Gallardo.
Brother and I used to have a 12-foot python is what we used to have growing up.
Wow. See, I'm gonna send this part of the clip to Kylan and let him know. Like, see, man, we got it. No, that's such excellent feedback. Thank you so much for being such a proponent of the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I very much look forward to the response to this episode. We look forward to your response to the episode. Please jump in the comments. Oscar, how could the folks contact you if they want to follow up with anything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I will be glad to share my email so you can put it in your show notes. But basically my email, and I don't mind people, reaching out to me anytime. Please feel free. ogallardo76 @gmail.com. That's my email address. On Instagram, I am Dr. OG, the Neuro PT. That's my Instagram handle, Dr. OG, the Neuro PT. And then on Twitter/X, at Oscar G DPT. That's how you can find me. Feel free to reach out. Any questions you have, more than happy to chat. I'm always looking forward to chatting with people, learning more about people, and learning different perspectives as well. So reach out.
Dr. OG, the Neuro PT on Instagram, at Oscar G DPT on Twitter/X. All of that info will be inside the show description, ready and up on your screen as you watch the episode as well too. We got him here, the Iron Man, classically trained Oscar Gallardo came to the Parallax Effect, showed us the way, man. Showed us the way, yes, indeed. We very much appreciate all of your contributions to the world of physical therapy. Coming here on the Parallax Effect and just being an advocate for our show, just getting the word out. It's all about perspective, just like you said. We're going to head and close it up here on that. Be sure to rate us 5 stars, please, or at least let us know how I can do better with this show. Don't let Oscar know how he can do better because he is doing the best. He is setting the example. He is being the man that he has always been ever since Halloween 1982. And even before that, he was always the man in Guatemala as well, too. So we super appreciate all the time you spend. Please tell Aaron I said hello. Have a great fast packing trip starting tomorrow. Be sure to tell us all about it. Thank you all so much again for joining the Parallax Effect podcast. Oh, and let me mention again, I almost forgot. You can reach us on Instagram at Parallax Effect Media, on Facebook, that is the Parallax Effect Podcast. On Twitter, that's Parallax Effects. Once again, that's Parallax Effects with an S. And on TikTok, search RiloKen27. Again, thank you for joining the Parallax Effect podcast here. For Oscar Gallardo, I am Ryan Lavelle, where every angle reveals a new depth of understanding. You've been watching the Parallax Effect podcast, where every angle reveals a new depth of understanding.